Welcome back to Practical AutoCAD and Inventor. In this video, we'll set up the AutoCAD drawing environment for isometric drawings. I'll walk you through enabling the isometric snap, switching between isoplane views, and configuring the grid so that you can start creating isometric drawings in AutoCAD. Let's begin by considering this fairly simple orthographic drawing. Somebody who has experience with orthographic drawings would easily recognize that this is one object represented in three views. I've got the front view here, I've got the top view right above it, and I've got the side view here. The hidden line indicates that there is a surface right there that is hidden from view, okay, and everything from one view has to line up with another view. Even the depth in this view has to match the depth in this view. So those are the basics of orthographics. But a new person might not be able to visualize this, or even if it was a more complex object, without some sort of a pictorial. And the pictorial that we can make in AutoCAD fairly easily is what we call an isometric. So in order to set up your isometric drawing environment, we're going to make just a few changes. I'm going to move my mouse down to the status bar, and you'll see here that I've got my grid turned on and my snap turned on. But if I right click on that snap button, I can choose this button right here that says Snap Settings, and it brings up this Drafting Settings dialog box with the Grid and Snap tab ready to go. Now right now my snap is set to 1/2 of an inch in the X and 1/2 of an inch in the Y, and they're both set to equal, so that if I change the X, for example, to 1/8 of an inch, then it will automatically change the Y value to that 1/8 of an inch as well. So that's a good thing when we're trying to work, because usually you want your X and your Y to be equal. Notice I can also turn that snap off and on by pressing F9, and I can turn my grid off and on by pressing F7. Now this right now, my grid is set up as a rectangular snap, which is good for making those orthographic drawings. But if I want to make an isometric drawing, what I want to do is come down here to the bottom, and I'm going to change that snap type from a rectangular snap to an isometric snap. A couple things will change as soon as I do that. You'll notice that one of these numbers changes because I'm going to now be working with a grid that is 30 degrees instead of horizontal, so it's going to do some calculations for me on the X. But I can, if I need to change my snap spacing, I can still change it right here by changing the Y. And it kind of does the same thing over here in my grid. Notice that the X spacing changes, but I can change my Y. I'm going to leave my snap at 1/8 of an inch and my Y at 1/2 of an inch, and I'm going to choose OK. And you can see what happens right off the bat now is my grid changes, so that instead of being horizontal, it's now at a 30-degree angle this way and vertical, and of course it's going to be at a 30-degree angle this way. Notice also that my crosshairs have changed, that I'm kind of looking at the front view. Now this would be good for drawing the front view of the object. If I want to draw the top view or the side view, I can switch the isoplane by pressing F5. That's the F5 function key. If I press F5, you'll see that it switches to the top, and the grid associated with it switches as well. And if I press F5 one more time, the grid changes, and now I'm doing the side view. So now using these tools, I can easily draw my object as an isometric. One other tool that can be very helpful for drawing an isometric drawing, especially a simple one like this, is to go ahead and turn the ortho on. That's F8 on your keyboard. But if I turn that ortho on, it's going to limit my movement in my cursor to the orientation that it has with the cursor on screen. So for example, if I wanted to draw the front view, which would be this view right here, I can now come in here and pick a point, and notice that no matter where I go with my mouse, it's only going to allow the lines to be drawn at the same angle, or at the, that's oriented with that isoplane. So in this case, I want my front view to be 3 inches wide and then 2 inches tall, and by using that direct distance input, I can easily walk through creating this object. So there's my front view. I've drawn this view now as as the front view of my isometric. If I'm ready to draw the side view, I can press F5 a couple times. Now I'm ready to draw the side view. I can say it's going to start off at that point. And I could use my snap and make it come out here exactly 3 if I wanted, or I could just type in, again, that direct distance input of 3, and then it's going to go up 2, and then back this direction 3. The other thing I could do is I could simply copy some lines. So rather than having to draw all of those lines, I can say I want to copy this one from there to there to there to there to there, and I can also copy some of these lines from one view or from one end to the other. So I could copy that from there to there and simply trim off what I don't need. So in just a few steps, I've taken this orthographic drawing and I've created the isometric drawing that is associated with it. And it's much more easy now for somebody who's not associated with orthographics to get a good idea of what this object looks like. In upcoming videos, we will look at doing more complex shapes and also doing circles, which in an isometric drawing become ellipses.